George. A compliment here, a joke there, attempts to start a conversation. But it didn't stay that way. The messages became more frequent, then constant. He wasn't just trying to talk to her anymore. He was trying to insert himself into her life. Every response from Georgia, no matter how brief or polite, seemed to fuel him further. And when replies slowed or stopped, he didn't take the hint. He doubled down. He began sending longer messages, more personal ones. Confessions that felt out of place given how little they truly knew each other. He told her how much he liked her, how she made him feel, how he couldn't stop thinking about her. It was intense, too intense. But Georgia handled it the way many people do when faced with unwanted attention. Carefully. She didn't want to be cruel. She didn't want to escalate things. So she responded with kindness, trying to create distance without causing conflict. She made her boundaries clear. She wasn't interested in a relationship. She wanted to keep things friendly. Nothing more. For most people, that would have been the end of it. For Jamie, it was only the beginning. Rejection didn't push him away. It pulled him deeper. Something shifted in his thinking. What he felt wasn't just disappointment. It was something heavier, something that lingered and grew. He began interpreting her responses in ways that suited him, reading between lines that weren't there, holding on to small interactions as if they meant more than they did. And when George eventually stopped engaging altogether, the silence didn't create distance. It created obsession. Behind closed doors, his focus narrowed. His thoughts circled around her, again and again, day after day, what she was doing, who she was with, why she had chosen someone else. Questions without answers. Frustration without release. What should have been a passing infatuation hardened into something far more consuming. And while Georgia was moving forward with her life, unaware of the intensity building behind the scenes, Jamie Reynolds was standing still, fixated, watching, and slowly, quietly, losing his grip on reality. There's a point where disappointment fades, and something far more dangerous takes its place. For Jamie Reynolds, that point came quietly. Outwardly, nothing dramatic changed. He still went about his daily routine, still appeared composed, still looked like someone navigating ordinary life. But internally, something had begun to shift. Slowly at first, then all at once. The silence he faced was no longer just frustrating. It became something he couldn't tolerate. Instead of letting go, he turned inward, not toward healing or acceptance, but toward control. If reality refused to give him what he wanted, then he would reshape it in the only place he could, his mind. What began as lingering thoughts soon transformed into detailed fantasies. Not fleeting daydreams, but structured, deliberate scenarios where he dictated every outcome. In these imagined worlds, he wasn't ignored. He wasn't rejected. He was in charge. And as those fantasies deepened, they took on a darker tone. Control wasn't enough anymore. He wanted dominance, power, total submission. The line between imagination and intention started to blur. What once lived only in thought began to spill onto paper. He started writing, not casually, but obsessively, page after page, word after word, scenes crafted with disturbing precision. He created narratives where resistance didn't exist, where he controlled not just the beginning of the story, but how it ended, and the endings were never gentle. Each script became more detailed than the last, more calculated, more extreme. He refined them like someone perfecting a plan, adjusting, improving, building towards something that felt to him complete. It wasn't just expression, it was rehearsal. While the outside world continued as normal, inside his private space, something dangerous was taking shape. A pattern was forming, one that revolved around control, humiliation, and irreversible outcomes. And the more he wrote, the more those ideas settled into him. They stopped feeling like fiction. They started feeling possible. There was no one interrupting this process. No one stepping in to question the shift. No one fully aware of how far his thoughts had drifted from reality. So he continued, alone with his imagination, alone with his growing fixation, alone with ideas that were becoming harder to contain. Eventually, something changed. The stories stopped being enough. They no longer satisfied whatever urge had been building inside him. Writing had given him a sense of control, but now he wanted something more tangible, something real. That's when the thinking evolved, from what if to how. And once that question took hold, everything else began to fall into place. Because this was no longer about emotion. It wasn't about connection. It wasn't even about rejection anymore. It had become something far more calculated, a shift from fantasy to intention. And from that moment forward, the path he was on was no longer uncertain. It was deliberate, and it was leading somewhere irreversible. Planning doesn't always look like urgency. Sometimes it looks like patience. For Jamie Reynolds, everything slowed down. There was no rush, no impulsive move, no sudden outburst that would draw attention. Instead, there was time, weeks stretching into months, used not to reconsider, but to refine. He began to think in steps, not emotions, not consequences, just steps. What needed to happen first, what needed to happen next, what could go wrong, and how to prevent it. It became methodical. He studied routines, timings, opportunities. He paid attention to details most people ignore, the kind of small, ordinary things that, when put together, create the perfect window for something calculated. Privacy became a key factor. He needed a setting where he wouldn't be interrupted, a place where time could pass without questions, where no one would walk in unexpectedly. That requirement shaped everything else. Then came preparation, not visible changes, nothing obvious, but subtle actions carried out quietly, items acquired without raising suspicion, adjustments made within a familiar environment, small enough to go unnoticed, but significant enough to serve a purpose. Every element had a role. Nothing was accidental. He thought about positioning, about timing, about how to maintain control from start to finish. Even the smallest detail mattered, because in his mind, failure wasn't an option. This wasn't imagination anymore. This was construction. Piece by piece, he built something that existed in the real world, something designed to turn intention into action. And yet, outwardly, everything remained the same. He still appeared ordinary, still moved through daily life without drawing attention. There were no sudden changes in behavior that would alarm anyone, no visible signs of what was being assembled behind closed doors. That contrast made it even more dangerous, because while nothing looked different on the outside, everything had changed on the inside. Eventually, the preparation reached a point where there was nothing left to adjust. No more refining, no more improving, no more waiting. All that remained was execution. But even that required one final piece. Access. He needed a reason, something believable, something that wouldn't trigger hesitation. It had to feel normal, even appealing, a situation that could unfold without suspicion. So he thought carefully. What would sound harmless? What would feel safe? What would lower any sense of caution? The answer came from something simple, something creative, something that wouldn't seem out of place, an idea that, on the surface, carried no threat at all. And once that idea formed, everything aligned. The setting was ready. The timing was right. The plan was complete. All he had to do now was set it in motion, because the most dangerous plans aren't the ones made in chaos. They're the ones built in silence. And by the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's already too late. The plan didn't begin with force. It began with a conversation. For Jamie Reynolds, the final phase required something deceptively simple: cooperation, not resistance, not suspicion. Just a moment where everything felt ordinary enough to proceed without hesitation. So he approached it carefully. His tone was measured, casual, nothing that would raise concern. The idea he presented was framed as something creative, even interesting, a harmless opportunity that required nothing more than time and a willingness to participate. There was no urgency in his request, no pressure, just a suggestion placed gently. And that's what made it effective, because when something feels normal, it doesn't trigger alarm. It doesn't make you question motives or search for hidden meaning. It simply exists as another everyday interaction, one of many that pass without consequence. For Georgia Williams, there was no clear reason to refuse. Nothing about the situation appeared threatening. No obvious warning sign. No visible indication that this was anything other than what it seemed. And so, the final piece fell into place. The day was chosen with intent. A time when interruptions were unlikely, when movement would go unnoticed, when the environment would remain controlled from beginning to end. Every variable had already been considered, long before the moment arrived. As the hours passed, everything remained quiet, still, prepared. Inside the house, the atmosphere was unchanged on the surface. Nothing appeared out of place to an untrained eye. The setting was familiar, structured, ordinary, but beneath that normality was something carefully arranged, something waiting, not chaotic, not improvised, but ready. This wasn't about reacting, it was about control. When Georgia made her way there, she stepped into a space that had already been defined long before she arrived. A space where every movement had been anticipated, where each moment had already been imagined in advance. And yet, none of that was visible, because the most effective setups don't reveal themselves. They blend in. They rely on trust, on the assumption that nothing is wrong, that everything is as it should be, that the person you're dealing with has no hidden intention beyond what they've shown. That assumption is powerful, and in this case, it was exactly what allowed everything to unfold. There were no sudden shifts, no immediate signs that anything had changed. The situation progressed as expected, calm, steady, controlled, exactly as it had been designed. Because by this point, there was no uncertainty left, no hesitation, no second thoughts. The groundwork had already been laid. The conditions had already been met. The environment had already been secured. All that remained was for events to follow the path that had been set long before, a path that looked ordinary from the outside, but was anything but. And once it began, there was no turning back. At first, everything unfolded exactly as it was meant to. No tension, no raised voices, no sudden shift that would break the illusion of normalcy. Inside a controlled space, the interaction moved forward in small, deliberate steps. Each moment flowed into the next, carefully guided, carefully contained. There was a rhythm to it, one that felt almost routine on the surface, yet carried a deeper, hidden direction. For Georgia Williams, there was no immediate reason to feel alarm. The situation hadn't crossed any obvious line. Nothing had happened, yet that clearly signaled danger. And that was the most critical part, because once fear enters the situation, everything changes. People pull away, they question, they act. But here, that moment hadn't come. Not yet. For Jamie Reynolds, control was everything. Not just physical control, but psychological. He needed the moment to unfold without resistance, without disruption. Every second mattered. Every reaction shaped what would happen next. So he adjusted. Subtly, a request here, a direction there. Nothing abrupt, nothing forceful. Just enough to guide the situation forward while maintaining the appearance that everything was still within normal bounds. But beneath that surface, something had already shifted. The atmosphere, once neutral, had begun to tighten. The space felt smaller, more enclosed, though nothing physical had changed. It was the kind of shift that's difficult to explain, the kind that lingers just beneath awareness, a quiet unease. And then the turning point, a moment where the balance tipped, where what had been controlled suddenly became irreversible. There are moments in life that divide everything into before and after. This was one of them. Whatever hesitation might have existed, if any remained at all, was gone. What followed was not chaotic, not uncontrolled. It was deliberate. A sequence of actions carried out with intent, without pause, without reconsideration. Time, in moments like this, doesn't behave normally. It stretches. It compresses. It becomes difficult to measure. Seconds can feel like minutes, or disappear entirely. And within that distortion, everything changes. For Georgia, what had begun as something ordinary transformed into something unimaginable, a realization that came too late, a situation that could no longer be reversed. For Jamie, there was no such conflict, no visible hesitation, no sign of doubt, only completion. Because this was the moment everything had been leading toward. The point where thought became action, where planning became reality. And once it was done, the silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one was heavier, final. The kind of silence that settles over a space after something irreversible has taken place. Nothing moved, nothing shifted, nothing could undo what just happened. And in that stillness, one truth became undeniable. This was no longer a plan. It was a crime, one that would leave behind questions, consequences, and a trail that could not remain hidden forever, because even the most carefully controlled moments eventually come to light, even before the night had fully passed. Something felt wrong, not in a loud, obvious way, no alarms, no immediate panic, just a quiet disruption in the pattern of things. The kind of feeling that starts small, almost easy to dismiss, but refuses to go away. For the people closest to Georgia Williams, that feeling grew quickly. Time moved forward, but she didn't return. At first, there were simple explanations. Delays happen, plans change, phones die. It's easy to rationalize absence when you trust the person who's missing. Easy to believe that everything will resolve itself with a call, a message, a quick explanation, but that moment never came. Calls went unanswered, messages stayed unread, silence stretched longer than it should have, and with every passing hour, concern began to turn into something heavier. Urgency. What had started as unease became action. Family members reached out to friends, retraced possible steps, searched for anything that could explain where she might be. Each attempt brought the same result. Nothing concrete, nothing reassuring, just more questions. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Jamie Reynolds was already moving ahead. There was no panic in his actions, no frantic attempt to escape attention. Instead, there was calculation, measured decisions designed to maintain a sense of normality around a situation that was anything but normal. He understood something critical. If nothing appeared wrong, it would take longer for anyone to realize the truth. So he created distance. Not just physical distance, but narrative distance. A version of events that suggested everything had ended without issue. A quiet conclusion. Nothing unusual. Nothing worth investigating. It was a strategy built on delay. Because time in situations like this can be as valuable as any plan. The longer confusion lingers, the harder it becomes to pinpoint when things truly went wrong. But there's a limit to how long that confusion can last. Eventually, the absence becomes undeniable. And when it does, everything shifts. Authorities were contacted. What had been a private concern quickly became something larger. Structured, coordinated, urgent. Information was gathered. Timelines were built. Movements were traced. Every detail mattered now. Every last known interaction. Every location. Every conversation. The search began to expand, moving beyond immediate circles into a wider effort to understand what happened. But with each step forward, one thing became increasingly clear. This was a simple case of someone losing contact. Something had interrupted the natural flow of events. Something deliberate. As the pieces slowly came together, the focus began to narrow. Patterns started to form. Inconsistencies emerged, small at first, then impossible to ignore. And at the center of those inconsistencies was one name that kept resurfacing. Because no matter how carefully a story is constructed, the truth has a way of breaking through. And once it starts to surface, it doesn't stop. By the time investigators fully grasped the scale of what they were dealing with, the case had already taken a darker turn. This was no longer a missing person inquiry. It had become something far more urgent. Information began to flow in from different directions. Witness accounts, digital traces, fragmented timelines. Each piece on its own seemed small, almost insignificant. But together, they formed something far more telling. A pattern that pointed toward deliberate deception. And once that realization set in, the search intensified. Officers worked around the clock, piecing together movements, analyzing communication gaps, and reconstructing the last known chain of events. Every minute mattered now. Every delay reduced the chances of finding answers quickly. But this wasn't a case built on panic. It was built on precision. And that made it harder, because whoever was responsible had already taken steps to stay ahead. Jamie Reynolds didn't behave like someone overwhelmed by what had happened. He didn't break down. He didn't turn himself in. He didn't stay still. Instead, he moved. Distance became his first instinct, not in a frantic escape, but in a calculated withdrawal. Each step placed more space between himself and the growing investigation. Each decision bought him time. But time is fragile when the net is closing. Surveillance systems, travel records, and witness sightings began to narrow the field. What once felt like open ground slowly tightened into something far more restrictive. He wasn't invisible. He was being tracked. And no matter how far he went, the trail followed. The moment came without spectacle. No dramatic chase. No confrontation. Just a quiet ending to a search that had been anything but quiet. When officers finally located him, there was no visible resistance. No attempt to fight back or flee further. It was as if, at some level, the outcome had already been accepted. But the arrest wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else. Because now, investigators had access, not just to the person they were searching for, but to everything connected to him. And what they would uncover would redefine the entire case. Inside his personal devices was a world no one expected to see. Not just evidence, but insight, files, folders, stored material, each layer revealing something more disturbing than the last. It wasn't random. It wasn't chaotic. It was organized, intentional, and deeply unsettling. There were writings, dozens of them, detailed, structured, methodical, not expressions of emotion, but constructions of control. Each one followed a pattern, a narrative that reflected the same underlying themes: domination, manipulation, and finality. These weren't abstract ideas. They were specific, focused, repeated, and as investigators reviewed them, one thing became clear: this hadn't started recently. It had been building for a long time. There were also digital alterations, images that had been manipulated in ways that suggested fixation, not just curiosity. Familiar faces appeared in unfamiliar contexts, altered to fit a pattern that investigators could no longer ignore. This wasn't just evidence of a crime. It was evidence of a mindset, a pattern of thinking that had been allowed to grow unchecked. And at the center of it all was a single, undeniable truth. Nothing about this had been spontaneous. While one team worked to understand the digital evidence, another focused on the physical search. The area of interest had already been narrowed. Specific locations were identified based on movement patterns, vehicle data, and environmental analysis. Then finally, a breakthrough. What had been uncertainty turned into confirmation. What had been hope turned into grief. The search came to an end not with relief, but with finality. And in that moment, the case shifted once again. No longer a question of what happened, but of why. When the trial began at Stafford Crown Court, the room was filled with tension, not just from the legal weight of the case, but from the emotional gravity that came with it. Every detail carried significance. Every statement added another layer to a story that was already difficult to comprehend. Jamie Reynolds sat quietly, composed, still, almost detached. There was no outward display of emotion that matched the severity of the accusations. No visible reaction as the prosecution laid out the case step by step, building a narrative supported by evidence that was both overwhelming and deeply disturbing. Witnesses spoke. Experts testified. Timelines were reconstructed in full view of the court. And as everything was presented, a picture emerged, one that left little room for doubt. This had been planned, deliberate, executed with intent. The prosecution didn't rely on a single piece of evidence. They didn't have to, because the case wasn't built on one moment. It was built on a series of interconnected facts, each reinforcing the other: digital records, recovered materials, behavioral analysis. Together, they formed a narrative that was both comprehensive and impossible to dismiss. There was no ambiguity, no alternative explanation that could account for everything that had been uncovered. The defense had little room to maneuver, because the truth, once fully assembled, was too clear. When the time came for judgment, the courtroom fell into a heavy silence. This wasn't a routine decision. It carried weight beyond the individual case, because it spoke to the level of danger, the calculated nature of the actions, and the risk posed moving forward. The judge's words were measured, but firm. This was not a crime that allowed for rehabilitation in the conventional sense. Not something that could be addressed with time alone. It was something deeper, more permanent. And because of that, the sentence reflected the severity of what had been done. A whole life order. No release. No return. No second chance. A decision made not just as punishment, but as protection. Because some individuals, once they cross a certain line, cannot safely re-enter society. And this was one of those cases. In the wake of the trial, attention turned towards something else. The past. Not just the recent past, but earlier moments, missed opportunities, warning signs that, in hindsight, seemed impossible to ignore. Questions were raised. Could this have been prevented? Were there signs that should have triggered stronger intervention? Did the system respond adequately when concerns were first brought forward? A formal review was conducted, examining decisions made by authorities and agencies who had interacted with Jamie Reynolds before the crime. The findings were uncomfortable. There had been indicators, instances where behavior had crossed lines, situations that, if handled differently, might have altered the outcome. but they hadn't been. And now, those missed moments carried weight they couldn't undo. The conclusions led to criticism, measured but significant, not just of individuals, but of processes, of how risk is assessed, of how potential threats are evaluated before they become reality. Because hindsight is clear, but prevention requires action before clarity exists. For the family of Georgia Williams, the legal outcome brought a form of justice, but not closure, because closure suggests an end. And for them, there was no true ending, only continuation without her. Grief doesn't follow a straight line. It doesn't resolve itself with a verdict or sentence. It lingers, shifts, and reappears in moments both expected and unexpected. But alongside that grief was something else: determination, a decision to ensure that her life would be remembered for more than the way it was taken, that her name would stand for something beyond tragedy. In the weeks that followed, that determination took shape. The Georgia Williams Trust was established as a way to create something lasting, something that reflected who she was, rather than what happened to her. Its purpose was simple but powerful: to provide opportunities for young people, to encourage growth, confidence, and experience, to support the kind of life Georgia had been building for herself. Through that work, her impact continues, not as a memory frozen in time, but as something active, ongoing, a legacy shaped not by loss, but by intention. Some crimes shock us because of what happened. Others stay with us because of how they happened, planned in silence, hidden in plain sight, carried out by someone who never looked apart. And that's what makes cases like this so unsettling, because it reminds us the most dangerous threats aren't always obvious. They don't announce themselves. They don't stand apart. Sometimes they stand right in front of us,